Julius's father was a mechanic, owned his own shop and everything, and he did some work for a person, and the person wouldn't pay him. And so he decided to get a lawyer to sue him. The person happened to be white. And he had trouble finding, in fact, he never did find a lawyer in the town who would file the lawsuit for him. And so the credit is given to that, to Julius deciding that I'm going to be a lawyer one day.
He never set out to make a name for himself. There was never a time when he wasn't making a name for himself. But it was never intended to make a name. It was never intended to bring recognition to Julius Chambers. What it was intended to do was not only to help folks, but to make sure that folks like his father, who couldn't get legal representation, would get legal representation. And that's what he did all of his life, right up until a few months ago before he died.
I would tell you, if you were trying to figure out what Chambers was made of, you would have to start with his parents, William Lee and Matilda Alma Chambers, who were themselves very industrious people. His father, as Fergie told you, owned a mechanic shop. His mother ran a store. And way back in that day, they put their two oldest children, Dr. Kenneth Chambers and their daughter, Ann Chambers, through private school at Laurinburg Institute. And Chambers was destined to go there, but he didn't get there because the man didn't pay his money, so he ended up in those segregated schools in Montgomery County. Chambers' brother, and Chambers didn't tell me this, but Dr. Chambers told me that his father was a member of one church and his mother another. And so every Sunday, they were in one of those churches or the other. And Chambers, wherever he lived, joined a church and attended the church every Sunday. Now, when I first got to Charlotte practicing as a lawyer, the Friendship Missionary Baptist Church to which he attended, I think, was only doing 11 o'clock services. So sometimes Chambers would say, meet me at 8 o'clock or 8:30 on Sunday morning. And he'd come dressed down to go to church. I'd be in jeans. And then he'd run off to church and maybe have dinner, but then he would come back. And I understand that he did that when he was in New York, and he did that when he was in Durham. Ella Hand, who is our office manager and who has worked for the firm longer than any person, that includes Fergie and Chambers. Chambers left the firm for a while in 1984, went to LDF, and then was at Central, but Ella continuously has been with the firm longer than any other person, told me about Mr. Chambers starting up this practice, and that periodically Mr. and Mrs. Chambers would come down and sit in the lobby, and then when the clients had gone, would go into Chambers's office and close the door and talk to him to be sure that he was paying attention to his clients and treating his clients right.
Chambers was humble from the very, very beginning. He focused on other people. As you said, he focused on clients. If you really want to make people jump, let me tell you, what you do in New York City is do to service personnel what he did to these folks in North Carolina. You get to somebody in a restaurant and say, how you doing? What's your name? What are your people? He would unselfconsciously grab people in hospitals, ordinary human beings, and with genuine interest and no motivation other than knowing who they were and reaching out to them, do that. It was a really remarkable thing to be around somebody with that kind of record, those kinds of achievements, who was other focused.